Hi, I'm Aaron Skinner from Fine Scale Modeler Magazine. I'm here with Matt Irvin, a longtime modeler who's worked in the visual effects departments at the BBC on several science fiction shows and other shows, news programs, I guess, as well as being the author of several magazine articles and books. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Aaron.
So, how long have you been modeling?
Well, I'm going to say all my life, but I think in about 6 months is pushing it. I'm not Mozart. But I think probably, I mean, kids, you know, when I was growing up, the kids, you know, there wasn't much to do. You played football, and because I mean real football, not this thing you play over here, funny straight ball and things, or you went to scouts or something, or youth club, or you built models, you know. And so it's pre-teens at that point, you know, 7, 8, 9, and group of friends from school and things. And
that's what got you into it?
Frankly, it was going to Woolworths when they still existed and buying Airfix kits at 2 shillings in pre-decimal money, which is, that's 10 pence in our money now, so we're talking about sort of 15 cents. You know, and you bought everything that was issued. Airfix issued railroad accessories, railway accessories, figures, and of course aircraft, tanks, cars, 32nd scale cars, which I was all right with, but I prefer bigger scale cars. And you bought everything and you built everything then. It was only later you got probably a little bit more sophisticated and say, I'm going to specialise in just doing this, because frankly there's just not enough time. And
you specialise now mostly in cars and space-related stuff.
Funnily enough, actually, although I built the Airfix 32nd scale cars and they're very good, I went to a shop, I'm going back now to the 60s, and I found these strange cars, models, bigger, from a company called AMT, which I'd never heard of at that point. And what I liked about them is that they were bigger in size. They had rubber tyres, of course we know they're vinyl, but anyway, rubber tyres and chrome parts, and of course they're not chrome, but anyway, they were different to the Airfix kits. But because they're AMT, of course they were 99.99% American subjects, so it got me interested by default into American cars, and then I got the Revell equivalent. Revell was a name known in the UK, a Monogram and Limburg and all the various other ones that was done at the time, Johan, later MPC. So it got me, it started me on a road, I suppose, with the hobby side of it. And then when I joined the BBC, I was always interested in space and astronomy, but it was almost like a side issue. There wasn't that many kits around anyway, to be perfectly honest. I mean, we missed out on a lot of the famous Revell, the space station, the XSN-01 at the time. Thank you, eBay, I've got them since then. But so consequently, that came along later. And funnily enough, actually, when I joined the BBC, and now because we're going to very late teens when I joined, and I joined the news department, Time of Apollo, it rekindled an interest with space, because NASA were putting out photographs. I mean, you've got to remember, it's pre-digital, it's pre-internet, so everything was coming in 5x4 transparencies, if everybody knows what they are. And I was in the photographic library, and because everybody had the same photographs, magazines, independent television news, ITN had the same photographs. So we thought, do something different, and I sort of volunteered almost. I said, well, I'd model make, and I went home, and in my old, God, it wasn't even a single lens reflex, it was in my old father's Voigtlander reflex camera view, so I had to line everything up, you know, with a tape measure and get the focusing done right. And I used to photograph the models, so we had something different to use. Okay. And a few years after that, it got me a portfolio, and I went to the people in charge of the special effects department, the BBC called Visual Effects, Jack Kine and Bernard Wilkie, who created the department, and sort of give us a job sort of thing, and they did. In fact, Jack put me on a 2-week trial, and 25 years later I left.
Well, I guess that trial worked out.
Well, possibly, yeah. They're still thinking about it, I think.
And which shows were you working on primarily when you were with the Visual Effects Department?
Well, I think people expect the BBC Visual Effects Department to solely do Doctor Who. No.
There's something else?
There was a lot of other things. The interesting thing about the effects department was, unlike virtually every other effects business, especially now, but even then, let's say we're working for movies, in that we did everything. Anything that was special and an effect, we did. I mean, perfectly honest, it was basically we did everything nobody else would do. You know, you go into production meetings with your set designer and your costume and your makeup, and if it was a Doctor Who, you'd read through it and you realised that's set, that's costume, that's makeup, okay, the rest is going to be me. So by default, we got everything nobody else did. So we did everything. So we did the classic, after all, we are a fine scale modeller. We did the model making, the miniatures, but we did the special props, the Doctor's famous sonic screwdriver. I added the magnet to the top of the very first prop. And we did what are generally called floor effects. And people say, why are they called floor effects? Well, you do them when you're standing on the floor. That is everything else. It is the collapsing siege, it's the blowing up of things, it is the elemental effects, the wind, the snow, the rain, and everything like that. So they are the three basics. And with Who particularly, and let's say a lot of other science fiction programs, but particularly Who, with monsters, you ended up possibly doing masks and special costume. If skin was required, you could end up doing that, and then costume wardrobe would take it and make it into the costume. So there was a lot of cross collaboration. Really, only the miniatures are the ones we did all by ourselves. Everything else was a collaboration.
And you're most famous at the BBC for?
Oh, well, I was most famous probably for realising that I could be put in front of a camera and not fall apart. Whereas most of my colleagues, are the best one in the world, probably far cleverer than I am, couldn't. They'd be, what was I say? But I don't know, I had a bit of stage training. My father's into amateur dramatics and things. I'd done it. So we had a Saturday morning kids programme. This was 3 hours of live, unrehearsed television, which even today would be balked at. And they said, oh, would you come along and talk about effects? And well, all right, okay. So I did it once, and they found that I could. I could talk to camera, and I could say, yeah, but do this and that, cut to so-and-so, you know, waggle your nose for them to run a bit of videotape. And a few weeks later, they came back and said, oh, could you do it again? I said, well, you've had me. You have one of my colleagues. I didn't want to hog it. I honestly didn't want to hog it. And they said, but they know you. Right. You're now known. Oh, which is quite true. So I ended up doing quite a bit of that. And I didn't really like it, actually, but I became the face of the department. So people assumed I did absolutely everything. Oh, no, I've got my... And in fact, there were occasions when I got my colleagues and said, hey, they're doing the real work sort of thing. I'm just presenting it.
Sure. Getting back to the models, you're still writing for, you've published several books and you still do some magazine writing.
I started writing fairly early on. Exactly why, I don't know. I had a good English teacher at school, I think, actually, funnily enough. He prompted me. He didn't say, oh, you've got to sit down and write things. But if you've got a good teacher, that's what you need. You may not think about it till years afterwards. But remember Alec Davison, he really was... He prompted me and thinking, hey, and I found I could, a bit like standing up and talking to television cameras, yeah, I can get things down on paper. And I started writing originally modelling articles, mainly for, well, it's a British rival of yours, but it's gone out of business now, Scale Models and Scale Models International. And I did that regularly. I did that for 25 years or so. And then it branched out. I did do some stuff for Fine Scale Modeller and a few other magazines. And I did a few books. People asked me to start writing books because I had a scientific background with the space thing, and these sort of sets of encyclopedias you get in libraries for kids, and I used to do 1 or 2 of those. And then somebody asked me to do a Doctor Who book, which was rather inventively called Doctor Who Special Effects. Well, it did what it said on the tin, really, didn't it? You know, it wasn't that inventive as far as the title, but I did that one. And since then, I started to do more model-making books. I did Creating Space for Apogee in Canada, and on all the spacecraft models ever built, ever factual spacecraft models, I would say, so not the science fiction side. Trouble with any list, of course, it's out of date as soon as it's published. Right. Last full stop, period, on the end of the typewriter, the keyboard, boom, it's out of date. And that's now 2002 that was published. And more recent years, I've done scale spacecraft modelling for Crowwood in the UK and scale car modelling. Again, it does what it says on the tin, basically. That's describing it. The biggest one I've done so far with my colleague Mike Tucker, fellow, he was my assistant, but then he learnt everything I taught him, which was 5 minutes. I mean, you often did it much better myself, and you'll see his name at the end of new Doctor Who credits for New Who. We decided, he's a writer as well, mainly fiction. Well, we want to do the definitive book on the effects department. It had closed by then. We always say, typical BBC, it made 49 years, not 50, so it didn't get a gold watch. 1954 to 2003, and Mike was the last one out. And basically, with the last one out, please turn the lights off and throw away the key. And he went off and ran his own model-making business. And I cut down a bit and things. I still do Doctor Who stuff. I run K9 if it's required for Doctor Who on the odd occasion. So Mike and me are actually two of the very few people who've worked on classic old Who and new Who. And there's only probably about 20, and that includes actors as well as behind the scenes. But we decided we'd write this book between us. And that one again, I end up always doing books that explain exactly what they say on the cover. BBC VFX. We haven't got any copies now. It's out of print, but it's on Amazon. It must be, everything's on Amazon. You can get hold of copies, but it's the only time it's going to be done. Full colour, covering. I'll let you into a little secret, actually. It has got Doctor Who in it. It nearly didn't, because there was so much on Doctor Who, and there's so much else to write about the BBC. Science fiction programmes, Blake Seven, Hitchhiker's Guide, Red Dwarf or whatever, some of the kids' programmes like Galloping Galaxies or Space Vets, let alone more general BBC programmes like Dad's Army. Not really known over here, but it's quite very, very famous. It's the BBC sitcom in the UK. So we wrote it all in some of the costume dramas, science programmes, Horizon, which are Novas here. So we covered basically the widest possible range we could get. But we thought, well, Doctor Who, we've got enough other stuff. There's all these books already out there. Then we thought, well, we're going to get lynched unless we put Doctor Who in. So as Mike we'd already worked on New Who, it was legitimate to include it. So we've got Old Who and New Who in there as well.
So, at a rough guess, how many models do you suppose you've built in your life?
Strange you should say it. This is interesting, because about a year ago I wouldn't have known, but I tried to rationalise what I've got, because I had boxes and models wrapped in tissue paper here's a box A. What's in box A? It's probably at the bottom. No. So I went down to my local supermarket. And you get the same here. You get these fruit and veg trays. And you can get, particularly cars, not so good for spacecraft. Let's talk cars. You get all the cars in, boom. Great. And you can stack them. They stack very high. You know, they're strong. And they're free. Right. And we're recycling, so we sound good. And I got about 12 in each. And I counted up the boxes, and there's 75 boxes. Do the math.
Math is hard.
About 1,000. Yeah. That's roughly. So there's at least 1,000 cars built. I haven't gone into the ones that aren't built.
Right.
And all the science fiction stuff. So I don't know, I've probably got through about 2,500.
That's a pretty good scorecard.
Yeah. And a pile still to be built. But I've got a shelf that's got something like the Revell Westinghouse power station. I will build it one of these. I don't know when, but it's not one of these, I'll never build it. I'm a builder, not a collector. You become a collector by default, but the fact you've got so much stuff you can't build it. But I've got nothing I wouldn't actually build.
So how big is the stash then of unbuilt kits?
That I haven't added up, but it's probably twice of what I've got built. Okay. And although I am cutting down on stuff, you can't take it with you. Apparently, I'm going to have a blooming good try. So what do? You build as much as you can. I'm actually, strangely enough, building more than I have done in past years, because you never know how long you've got to, without being too morbid about this, you never know how long you've got. You might just well get down and actually build the things. Using a few new techniques, because new techniques are always coming along and things. And their computerization is a godsend, because you want a reference, Google, print out. I'd still print it out, just there's all my references already. I still keep, besides obviously all my copies of Fine Scale Model and Scale Auto, I do get Collectible Automobile. I religiously, that's my Bible of things. But even that will not have some things, so Google 58, Itzel, yes, yeah, I know, okay, that's, so you use the modern techniques. It's like all these sort of things. It's like doing effects, to be perfectly honest, because I've had it said to me, and I said my colleague Mike Tucker has as well, oh, CGI, do out of a job. Nope, it's just another tool. There'll be a time when CGI is absolutely perfect for what you want. Other times, no, you build a miniature, and you put CGI on afterwards, whatever. Yes, people think, some producers have actually said, oh, I want cutting edge technology and use the latest CGI. I'm going to strangle them if I hear that again, because no, use the best tool. Perfectly honest, if you can pull it on a piece of string, you pull it on a piece of string. Sure. We had one famous occasion, admittedly going back a good number of years ago, with K9, which I'm long associated with from Doctor Who, doing the very first spin-off the Sarah Jane, which became the Sarah Jane Adventures, was then K9 and Company. Last shot of the day, it was at night, none of this day for night stuff, no, genuinely at night. There was a tree-lined church yard, and the dog was rushing down. He's always called the dog, not K9. Was rushing down to defeat these witches and things like that. You know, guns. Well, he's gun blazing, whatever. Right, turn over, and the drive broke of the dog. Anybody who ever sees K9 for real, underneath the front, there's a big screw eye to which you attach a piece of fishing line, which is in the box, and we just pulled him. He went a heck of a lot faster than he does normally, because you can't see us at night. So, no, always have backup plans.
Sure. Don't
think nothing's going to break. Oh, it can't possibly break. It will.
So as a kid wandering into the Woolworths when you were a little kid, I'm sorry, as a kid, obviously, when you're wandering into the Woolworths buying model kits,
I'm a big kid
could
now.
you have imagined that you would end up making your entire career out of essentially doing that?
No, but then I never really think that far ahead. Everywhere I've got is purely by chance. I joined the BBC by chance. I moved from doing news research to special effects by chance. Everything, I started doing appearances on television by chance. I started writing books by chance. It has none of it. Yes, you put yourself in the right situation to actually be in the right place for it. Like I was with the BBC already, and therefore moving from news to effects was within the same organisation. I didn't have to change my staff number, for example, or my pension plan. But it was a completely different type of job as such. And going there originally, I'd never have imagined that's what I'd end up doing. Or who knows, I may end up doing something else. It's, you know, they always say they've got you half a dozen jobs inside you yet. Or how many have I had? I'm not really quite sure.
Great. Well, thanks for coming to Fine Scale Modeler and talking to us.
Thank you, Aaron.
I appreciate it.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.